welcome. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here on today's masterclass about overcoming fear and finding the courage to write. And so we're here today with Janelle Miller, and I am going to let the cat out of the bag on her. She's a hilarious lady, first of all. You need to know that. So we're going to laugh a lot today.
No, it's going to be boring because you said that.
And she wrote this fabulous book. This is your first book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she's working on a second, and we're going to talk about that today. So, Janelle, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're writing these days.
Okay. Well, Janelle Miller. I'm an Air Force brat, so I grew up everywhere. Just pick a year, I'll tell you where we lived. Lived in Germany for a while, and we have somebody. Is it Andrew who's from the UK?
It's George.
George. My daughter is living in the UK, so go you. I was just there and I could live there forever. Not that I don't love America, because I do. So I'd have to do forever in America and then switch it to forever in the UK so no one gets offended. Anyway, and I've kind of always done a little bit of writing and performing. And in the last several years, I've written on humor blogs, several different humor blogs, had my own. I was asked to write the Little Humorous. I live in Utah, and I was asked to write the Little Humorous Mormon book, which was a lot of fun to do. And I joined a writing group like in 2009, and I had an idea, and I started working on it, and I could not figure out how to get this story written. And I was writing, and I wrote for years on it, and I would start over. I would get to a certain point, and I'd just be stuck, and I'd be sitting there staring at my screen going, where are the brilliant ideas? I love this character. I love the setting. And so I'd start again, and I have like 65 first chapters. And then I start writing other chapters, and I'd have all these other chapters sitting out there. And I had 30,000 words and no idea how to link it together into a story. And I was getting to a point, I mean, I know how to write, hard, fast, short, humorous hits. I know how to sort of encapsulate a little humor post or whatever, but I had become convinced that I couldn't write a novel, that I was just an essayist or whatever. And I had almost given up. I'd had to actually shelve that story, which was really hard because I was in love with that story, and I had to kill the whole darling. I didn't just kill a few darlings. I had to kill all of it. And later on, I wrote a short story, and I went to a Dave Farland writer's boot camp last year, and I showed it to him, and he said, this needs to be a middle grade novel. It needs to be a series. And I was like, awesome. How do I get past page 3? And his class was really helpful. And it kind of gave me the idea that maybe I could write something longer than 3 pages. And flash forward to just this last August, and I went to the Reader's Digest Writers Conference in New York. And the first class I went into was Annalisa's. And I was like, if this doesn't work, I'm putting up my writing hat, and I'm just going to go live on the stage and raise my kids and do that stuff. And so I went into her class, and the first questions were, how many of you have written your first chapter 65 times? And how many of you have written multiple chapters and you don't know how to link them together? And how many of you sit there and stare at your screen and it's blank and you feel like you should have ideas and nothing's coming? She listed every single thing that I had felt. And I was like, yes, me. And she's like, you're a pantser, you're a discovery writer, and there's hope for you. And I felt like the heavens opened and angels descended. And after taking her class and talking to her, I was like, I have to sign up for the writing gym, because I have got to be able to figure out what a pantser is and what a discovery writer is. I was convinced that I was an outliner who just had no skill. And so, ta-da, there you go. That's my story in a nutshell. Also, I have 4 kids, and my favorite color is green.
These are important things for us to know, because there will be a quiz at the end. So so I'm really fascinated by your story. Now, I know a little bit of the inside scoop, but when we met at the Writer's Digest conference in August in New York City, you and I were having a conversation about, the fear of writing, and this loomed really large for you at that point. So take us back to that moment in time and tell us, what did that feel like? What were you afraid of? What did that look like for you?
The point that I had reached when I came to the conference?
Yeah, when you came to the conference.
I was completely frozen. Not completely, because I could still write short, humorous stuff, but at that point, it had become a personal thing. It kind of felt like a personal failure. when you want to write, you're kind of compelled to. You will have, I mean, I know you all know what I'm talking about. You will have an idea that stays in your brain, or a character that stays in your brain. Or you may have a blank screen and just have this feeling in your chest, like, I've got to sit here until I write something because I want to create something. And I have felt like that since I was a little kid. My best friend in childhood, Cappy, and her dad was in the Air Force, and we lived in different places, but we wrote stories through the mail. I mean, it's in there. And to not be able to do that, to have spent so many years figuring out, and I mean, I tried everything. I went to so many writers' conferences and so many classes, and to have to sit there and go, I can't do this. It felt like I was admitting defeat and cutting, my arm off, losing part of myself, because it's just so much part of your psyche to need to create in that way. So when I arrived there, it really was, okay, if I don't get help here, I'm a short storyist. I'm an essayist, really not even a short storyist, an essayist. And that's what I'll be. And it didn't feel great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, I mean, I would use the word despair. I mean, I feel like you were really sort of like mired into that space.
In terms of writing, I mean, the rest of my life was fine.
Yeah. But like, just thinking about writing, and specifically, we were talking about this novel that you wanted to write, and that kind of felt like this, I don't know, Everest in your life.
Yeah. I did not have faith that I could get past what I hadn't gotten past in the prior effort, the 5-year effort, probably more than that.
And so at that time, you and I spoke about the writing gym, and it was something that you were thinking about at that point, but there were some considerations for you. So walk us through that decision.
So you mentioned it to me, and I thought I really kind of want to do that, because I could tell from your class, obviously you understood discovery writers, and I had started to realize that's probably what I was. But financially for me, that was like, anything above $50 I couldn't do, and so but I remembered well, and I will, before I say that, I was also worried about whether it would work or not. Mm-hmm. So am I going to invest, if I find the money, am I going to invest in this and have it end up being the same as when I went in, and not have worked, and and I didn't know you. And so I didn't know, I mean, I knew your class was great, but I had to just kind of take this leap of, she knows what she's talking about. Mm-hmm. And then in the conference, we had a keynote speaker, and because I'm on the spot, I'm going to blink on her name, so I expect you to fill it in, who talked about blonde hair. She had blonde hair. No? Okay. Come on, you would think you meet a few people in your lifetime. Anyway, she talked about how you need to she was a single mom, and she took out loans or something to be able to write her first book. And she hadn't expected to be in that position. And she just went ahead and did that and invested. And that stuck with me. I thought, okay, I can't quit this until I have done all I can do to try to make it work. And that was all I could do to make it work, was to make that financial sacrifice. And the sacrifice of time was also a worry for me, because I'm a busy woman, like everybody, like everyone is. Everyone's not a woman, but everybody's busy. So just to clarify. So, so that's so it was a leap of faith for me to sign up for that too.
Yeah. And then you did. Mm-hmm. And did it work?
Yes, it did. In fact, yes, it did. And it took me probably 2 weeks to find my groove in it, but I immediately loved writing salon. That's probably what kind of gave me the feeling like, oh, I might be able to do this. So my first 2 weeks, I probably managed to write like 900 whole words each week, maybe. And Andy kept saying, the personal trainer kept saying, it's any word that you write is fine. And I know how that's like the thing you tell your kids, it's fine. Any effort you do is fine. You're special. And I was not feeling special because my counterpart, and there were 2 of us in the program at this point, it was kind of a small group, and her goals were 10,000 words a week. And I was over here going, I'd like to break 1,000, in 1 week. And the writing salons where you gave us a writing prompt, and they were unusual writing prompts, and had us write, really helped me, because I chose to go ahead and just try writing chapters in my story instead of just writing any old thing. And that started my brain going, and it started things kind of coming together. And between that and the constant encouragement, and then the Q&As where I could say to you, I don't know what's coming next. This is freaking me out. I feel like I'm throwing my naked baby out there and nobody's helping me dress my baby, and and just your understanding of what a discovery writer is and does, and that you just have to write even if there's nothing in your brain. That really helped me get through those first 2 weeks until I understood and figured out what my process was. Might have been 3 weeks.
Yeah, and so talk a little bit about your Q&A experience, because I know that you and I had some moments where, you were on that roller coaster, and there were some aha moments for you. So talk a little bit about that.
The Q&A is sort of set aside for us to go through the modules that you provide and then ask questions about them. And the modules were really helpful. But for me, I think I'm like a discovery writer to the 900th degree, to the nth degree. I'm all the way. When I write an outline, it ruins the book for me and I can't write it. I've done that before. I did that. I did a 30-page outline for that book I was trying to write, and I didn't want to write the book. Mm-hmm. So for me, the modules will be something I go back to as I'm continuing my process. So what the Q&As turned out to be for me was me finding out from you what is normal. What is normal for a discovery writer? Is what I'm doing normal? Is what I'm feeling normal? And how do I deal with the fact that I want to know everything before it happens? And not just in writing, but in life. I like to plan ahead and know what's coming and all that. And so the fact that I didn't was making me hyperventilate. I was just, when I'd come into Q&As, and you'd be like, okay, you have to find the trees before you can find the forest. And then when you find the trees, and then once you find the forest, once you found the trees and built the forest, then you'll know what the trees are. I know that sounds weird, but it made sense to me. And puzzle piecing and all that, and it was absolutely right. And I finally realized through talking to you, it finally got encapsulated when you were saying to me, I was like, what about an outline? And you said, your first draft is your outline. This is your outline. And I went, bing, I'm writing my first draft to find out what the heck happens in my book. Then I can come back afterwards and look at it with an outline and go, okay, this here, oh, though that needs to move. Gee, I wrote the same chapter twice. How did I do that? But that legitimized me when I realized, when I had permission to write whatever came to my head so that I could find out what the story was, that set me free. And that was in the Q&As.
Awesome. And, we're here to talk about fear. And I know that this has been a huge victory for you in the writing gym. So we talked about the tool a little bit, the writing gym, but talk a little bit about the experience. So we talked about where you started when we met at the writers conference. And clearly, we're looking at a woman who's not just confident in herself, because that's definitely who you are, but confident in her writing. And so how did that happen for you? What were the steps? Take us through that process a little bit. How that change happened.
To becoming confident in my writing.
In your writing, yeah.
The course of the whole program. Honestly, it was, first of all, in being legitimized. First thing that started helping me was realizing when you listed everything and it had literally been every challenge that I had experienced, that first got me feeling like, oh, these are legitimate problems. I'm therefore a legitimate person and a legitimate writer. And you know what? I'm seeing questions down there coming up, and I'm talking so much that I'm not answering them.
No, that's fine. I'll take care of it. I'll be in charge of the questions.
Okay. So that legitimized me first. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm a writer. So then as we went through the first couple of weeks, and I was kind of getting discouraged because I was having a really hard time finding the time to sit down and just write 2,000 words a day or whatever it was going to be. Somehow through the Q&As and the personal training and the different things we did, I realized I was going to have to, my goals weren't being met. I would have time goals, I would have word goals, and that was knocking on my fear. I'm not getting this done. And somewhere in there, something, I can't remember, but something triggered me to think I've got to try something completely different. It's probably something Andy said. And I wish I could put it on a plaque and remember it, but I'm postmenopausal. I can't remember most things anymore. Sorry. So anyway, I should not have told everyone that. That was personal information that you didn't need to know. Sorry. Anyway, well, now we're all friends. We're all best friends now. Anyway, so I remember I had read Stephen King's On Writing, and I think it was him. He talked about recording. I think it was him. I can't remember. But I did read his book and it was great. So whoever it was, I read that they had recorded their chapters, and I've seen authors do that. And so I had tried it years ago and it did not work for me. It just was weird. And I didn't understand how I was supposed to know what came next. And so this time, because I had gained a little more understanding of you just kind of let it flow so you can discover the story, I thought, I'm going to try this and I'm going to multitask because I don't have these massive blocks of time and I'm impatient. I want to write this. So I went to the gym like I do every day, and I pulled out my iPhone and started the voice recorder. And while I was on the treadmill or spinning, I just put myself in character. I had also just done a play. And so that was kind of still in my brain. Being in character was still in my brain. And this was something I hadn't done the first time. I didn't put myself in scene and in character. So I put myself in scene, made myself a 12-year-old boy, because that's my protagonist. So I put myself in his head and I just started feeling and talking what it would be like to be him in that scene. And I started talking the scene and I wrote the scene. And I was like, whoa. And I got home and I typed it up and it was a lot of words. And between that personal training and the next week, I think I had written 11,000 words, 10 or 11,000 words, something like that. And every day I went and I would record it and the scenes would just flow. They would just come out of me. And, and my child is calling me right now. And I don't know why it worked better that way. I think I'm obviously a verbal processor, and I think maybe a kinetic learner, and it just came out. And so that got rid of most of my fear for me, was when I realized that I could get a lot done without just plopping myself down at my desk, when I could be doing something I needed to do and I could also get that done. And because I'm moving and I'm doing something else, I'm not feeling the fear of, oh no, what's my next word? What's going to happen next? It's just coming out of me. And that was a huge, huge step up. And the fact that by the second or third week, I think the third week, I think I had like, I can't remember, was it 8,000 words? And I now have, I think it was the third week, and I now have 65,000 words. I was gone 2 weeks in there. And so, what's it been, 2 months?
Yep.
Massive. Most consecutive words I've ever written. Not the most I've ever spoken, but the most I've ever written, which is a miracle. And that has really helped my fear. I still have fear sometimes when I'm, what comes next? Am I doing this right? But I also know how to get past this. Just keep going, just keep swimming, as Allie Powers says, just keep swimming.
Yeah.
That was her mantra.
So if I can extrapolate a little bit, it sounds like one of the things that the writing gym helped you as far as your fear is concerned is something that I wrote in Storytelling for Pantsers, which is find the writer you are and be that writer.
Yes.
So if we're giving tips, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying you helped me find my process. It wasn't just, you gave me some tips and tricks and ideas. It's that because you could answer my question and you created an environment of safety so that I trusted what you guys said. And that's the thing, whether it's, of course it needs to be the writing gym. So I shouldn't say whether it's you guys or another organization. It should be you, but whether it's your writing group or a group of supportive people, you need to be someplace where you feel safe when you're writing, and people you can go to with whom you feel safe to present these issues to, which is how I felt with you guys. And I trusted you. I trusted what you said. It was obvious to me by what you were teaching in the modules and was in your book and in the class that you had learned something and it was something that worked. And so I could trust that. So my recommendation is that you write in an environment of trust. And if that's just in your house, with your significant other or your dog or your mom or whatever works, then that's great. But, having people who know what they're doing and can reassure you that you're doing it right can help you free up your fear and find out what works for you. So yeah, finding out what works for you, whatever way you do that, is huge.
Yeah, so this is interesting to me. So if you think about, that person that you were in August, and so she's afraid to finish this book, and she also is like, I don't know if this is going to be worth it. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if this is the solution to my problem. And you take like now you, and you put those two people in dialogue. Like, what does now you say to past you that says, it is worth it. This is going to work. This is a solution to your problem.
65,000 words, or 62,000, wherever I am exactly. Yeah, that's, if I had looked at the very beginning when I was having the doubts and my future self came and talked to me and said, by the end of this, you're going to have 62,000 words or 65,000 words written. So trust this process. then I would have been like, okay, that's the thing. I don't know if that's what is that what you are?
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't, I was just curious because, you mentioned sort of like needing to get over that hump, which you did. And like, there's a fear component there too. That's, which is what we're here to talk about, around, trusting somebody, trusting yourself, trusting the process. I think that there are a lot of fear questions there. And so, hindsight is 2020, right? So now that you kind of know what it looks like, you can speak to those fears in a unique way.
And I think the other thing then that I would say is that because it's an 8-week process, it's not a one-time class or a 2-day class or something you're doing over the course of 8 weeks. And you know what? I was somebody who needed a little bit of hand holding. I mean, you guys don't really sit there and just hold your hand. There was support. It's not hand holding. It was support. And because you took me through each process and each up and down and reassured me and pointed out, look, you did that thing. Look, you did that thing. Look where you are with that thing. You did that thing. That helped me see, oh, I did that thing. Look where I am with that thing. Oh, and that built up my ability to feel legitimized in my writing process and as a writer. So yeah, I would walk up to myself and say, you're going to have 60,000 words when you're done with this. Which would have been a miracle. But I think what I would have also said is, look, have faith each day of the week that you're going through a process that is teaching you. Have faith in what you learned yesterday. Have faith in what you learned the day before that. Have faith, everything you learn, just apply, just relax and breathe and go. Just go with it, Don't think so much. So.
I love that. So George has a question. He says, I write in flow and allow whatever thought process in my mind at any moment, yet have had blocks over the last few weeks. Suggestions on ways to overcome this? Is it worth putting aside planned time to write in this effort? Oh, that's a really good question, because that's definitely something that we talk about, that you and I have talked about, as far as like, when do you write and how do you write? I'm so sorry. My dog thinks so yeah, what are your suggestions there?
In my big fat experience, well, interesting you would say that. And I don't know if this is exactly what you're talking about. This is George, right?
Yeah.
Okay, George. But right after my program ended with Annalisa, literally the next week, I ran into that where I was blocked. I kind of hate to say blocked, but I kind of was. I couldn't write. Like, I would go ahead and do my talking, but it was dorky as heck in my voice recorder. It was, and then a thing will happen and she says this, and normally I'm in scene, I'm talking as if I'm there, but it was just, then the thing, and it was really bad. And I had written some scenes, but they were just like being forced out of me. And they weren't, I wasn't feeling them, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And so I was kind of one time relaxing and pondering and thinking about what I had written, the yuck stuff that I had written and where it was taking my characters. And I just kind of relaxed. And I felt like, I kind of know this sounds so weird. Writers are so weird. I needed to ask my characters a question. And so I did. I was like, is this what you would do? Is this what Ms. Herkimer, the librarian, would do? And I realized, oh my gosh, no, this is not what she would do. And I realized that I was trying to force my characters to do something that they didn't want to do. And it wasn't that they were being bossy pantses, it's that I wasn't making them true to themselves. I had just decided which way this scene was going to go, and it wasn't the way it would have gone with this person. So the minute I realized that, I kind of asked myself, the way you do as you discovery write or any kind of write, what would you do? If I were her. So I imagine I was her, what would you, oh, that's what you would actually do. Of course, that's what you would actually do. And he would do this in response to that. And then so then I scrapped what I had written and started from that new vector, and it all came. So what that taught me was to, when I'm blocked, to first ask myself, the characters, get in scene and say, okay, is this what you would actually do? Is this what you want to do? Is this what would actually happen? And it wasn't realistic. And I feel like, that's one experience. And so hopefully I can test it out again, but that cleared it up for me.
Yeah, that's great. And, you mentioned the modules, which for those of who aren't members of the writing gym, those are instructional modules teaching you about craft. So were there some tips in there that really kind of informed these moments of stuckness, that gave you some tools or some tips to really tap into that were effective in that way?
I think because my approach to the modules is to come back, once I have the whole thing done. I don't have them memorized, but what I do feel is, because I went through all of them, is that they have been sitting underneath everything I've been doing and kind of keeping me going. And I think one of the ones that has really stuck with me is when you're talking about the
Plot arc.
The plot arc.
Thank you.
Yeah. The climax and the energy increasing and all that stuff. And that was one of the things that I realized what I didn't have, what was lacking in those scenes was that drive and that energy. And I can still remember your diagram, the little chart. And that's what it was just, they were just kind of meh. And that came back. And that was probably part of what informed that question. What is wrong here? Nothing's happening here. In fact, you know what? I distinctly remember thinking of that. There's nothing happening here. This is just blah. And so, yeah, so actually that one has stayed in my mind the whole way through. In fact, to the point that I get worried that I have too many climactic moments, but we can shave those off.
Right. In the publishing mastermind. We'll worry about that later. So Dana is on, and Dana is also hilarious. The two of you are going to get along like crazy. I can't wait. We're going to have tears streaming down. It's going to be so fun. We throw Andrew in the mix. My gosh, we're going to pee our pants. Okay. So her question, she said, does your novel deal with comedy? If so, how do you incorporate that into your story?
Oh, I hate this question. Nothing against you. I've thought about it before. I've been asked it before. I haven't ever sat down and analyzed it. For me, it has to do with the character and their personality. And I think a lot of the way they talk and the way they express themselves and the way they think. And if they're not that funny, then they're just not that funny. And although the people who are more serious can have their ironic moments, and those moments where things happen that they don't expect, and it's just like, what? So for me, the humor really does come out of the character and the personality, and putting them in relatable situations with the kinds of thoughts you really have, but you wouldn't write in a formal setting, or you wouldn't say in a formal setting. And so I like to be sort of really honest and unusual, the way humans really are and the way we really do think. I don't think this is answering your question very well. It just kind of comes out of my characters. I don't actually plan the humor. I don't actually think, oh, this is a moment when I need some humor. It kind of just happens depending on whose POV I'm writing from or who it is.
Yeah, well, and I think if I can read Dana's mind, just because I know where her novel is coming from, she's got a very serious topic, and she is a funny person by nature. And so I think, and I'm guessing for you, Dana, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, that she's thinking about what is that balance where you're dealing with serious issues, the human condition, but that you've got this overlay or this style that's comedic. So you can tell me if I'm wrong, Dana, in my interpretation of your question. But and I think that you're a good person to ask about this, because your book, is for a different audience than hers. She's writing for adults. You're writing for young adults. But you have funny situations, but your protagonist is very real. He's got very real human problems. So talk a little bit about how you get into that mindset where you're balancing, the reality of the human condition with a funny book. Maybe that might be where Dana was headed.
I think some of that is feeling life, because how many times have you been in a situation that's really awful and something just completely out of the blue absurd happens, or you look at it and it is such a bad situation that all you can do is laugh, or you're having an intense conversation and somebody goes riding their bike across, just some dorky thing happens and it kind of busts you out of the situation. I think for me, a lot of it is putting myself in the ebb and flow of actual life, and kind of having that sense for when, if you think about your life, you can probably get a sense for when that moment of humor is needed, when that moment of humor might come up, when things have gotten so absurd that you have to say something ridiculous and laugh at it. If you read Shakespeare at all, he's brilliant at that. He always, in his tragedies and even in some of his histories, he always has a comic relief, because you've got to, or it's too heavy. So I feel like as humans, we have a sense for the appropriate. I believe we are respect monitors inherently. We know when we're being respected, and we know when we're being respectful if we're paying attention. And so I think if you just let your inner respect monitor out, if we all do, when we're writing, I think we'll know when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. And we go back through our draft and we can look at a moment and go, oh no, that's not the right moment for that. But I think generally when stress comes to an absolute climax, right at that moment is maybe not the best thing, but maybe as we're getting to it, or maybe right after it, or I think we need to trust. In singing, they say trust your instrument. So I think we need to trust our instrument, which is our senses and our mind and our ability to know when those things are appropriate. I think if we try to force them in, it comes off as forced.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, that's one of the things that I talk about in storytelling for pantsers, and also in the modules, that balance that Shakespeare struck. And I think that I was talking about Hamlet specifically, alas, poor Yorick, and how it's funny, right? I mean, he's holding a skull and that's funny, and he like kind of tosses it aside, but it's also this huge transitional moment that is the catalyst for his decision to murder, right? And so I think, would that we were all Shakespeare, but I think that he gives us a really good example over and over and over again of that really awesome reality of life, the balance between tragedy and comedy.
And I think you'll notice that when he does it, it's never in the moment of the most intensity. It's not when he doesn't start cracking jokes when he's, fighting Laertes, or you know what I'm saying? It's when he's separated. So here this blah moment has happened, and now he's over here, and it's like, okay, dead guy, let me talk to your skull. I used to know you. I'm so stressed out, I'm now going to joke about it. But usually it's not in that moment of stress. It's usually a moment afterwards. Well, that was awesome. If you've seen Lion in Winter, Katharine Hepburn is in that, and there's this awful moment where she's having, I don't remember all of the character names. She's discussing her kids with her husband. I know one of her sons is Richard the Lionhearted. This is terrible. I haven't seen it in ages. But anyway, all these awful things have come up, and they've said horrific things to each other, and she's on the floor on her knees, and everybody has left, and she goes, well, all families have their troubles. And it's this massive understatement, and it's this hysterical moment, because it's like they're talking about every awful thing under the sun, and she's now alone, and boom, she can hit that moment of, well, sometimes you have a bad day. I've just blown up half my family and the kingdom, but hey, so maybe that's part of it, is that timing after the worst stress.
Great. So let's see. Andrew had a question. He is asking, what do you still fear? And if anything, how are you going to keep it from hindering your writing?
What do I still fear? We're talking writing, right? Not
Spiders.
my kids living in London, my child living in London away from me. That's actually quite awesome. What do I still fear in writing? I think still fear. It sounds like I'm so accomplished. I'm still in the fear. So I'm still making sure that I really do think I can do this. I do feel a lot more confident, but I would say I still have those little moments when I'm starting to write a scene that I haven't had any images kind of come to my mind or haven't had any hint of what's going to happen. I still get kind of, okay, what if I say the wrong thing? What if this isn't right? And I don't know what I think will happen if I say the wrong thing. If I think, a pit will open under my treadmill and I'll drop into, Dante's ninth circle of hell or whatever. I don't know what I think will happen or why I'm afraid of that, but it is a very vulnerable thing. So whenever what I'm writing is a vulnerable moment for me, I don't know what's going to happen, or maybe I won't hit the right notes for this scene, then I kind of go, but what I do in those moments is literally kind of shake my head and remind myself, okay, it's okay. I'm allowed to write crap. If it's crap, it's okay, because I can rewrite it. And I'm trying to find out what's happening. I'm trying to find out. That's the process. If I don't know, it's okay. So I do a little self-talk and I just keep going.
It almost sounds like you're echoing Andy in that.
Yeah.
Well, because you said before, that she had said something like that too. So, um,
Lunch. Yeah.
yeah, that's really good. Like, we got into
Valley.
your head, Janelle. Oh man. Oh shoot. I got so on that track. I was thinking of something else that I wanted to ask you, and I completely forgot what it was.
I don't know. Somebody say something.
Somebody say something. Um, something. Andrew says something. Let's see.
Now we can be done. Bye.
Yeah, the end. So, oh shoot, it was brilliant. Oh, thank you, George. My dog is cute. Her name is Mia, and apparently is finally laid down. She's been playing with every toy in her little bin over there.
Did it have to do with the process or with the story itself?
Yeah, let's see. But we were talking about fear and Shakarama. I can't remember. It was brilliant. I promise.
I'm sure. You know what? It'll come back. It will come back to you. I feel like I'm not convinced that I will ever have zero fear, and I feel like in performing, I'm pretty used to performing. I'm pretty used to being in front of audiences, but I don't ever have a performance that I don't get some nerves from. Now I don't get paralyzing nerves anymore, but like that's just energy that I can use. And I think I'd be a little worried about the state of my writing if I never had any kind of anxiety about where it was going to go. And again, I don't mean debilitating, oh my gosh, I can't write, but like, it keeps me on my toes, and I can push past it. I can remind myself, wait, this is part of the process. It's okay. And you know what? If my self-esteem is so tied into it that and I don't think there's any way around this at the beginning, especially, I think you do have your self-esteem tied into this because it's totally vulnerable and it's you're putting out there. But if it's so tied into it that I can't function if I get criticism or whatever, then that's problematic, and I need to go take care of me. And that was also part of my problem with that other book that I was trying to write, is I was so worried about, I was so conscious of the audience and what they were going to think of it the whole time I was writing, that it would freeze me up. And this, for the first time, has not been that way. And I got that way with my short stuff, where I didn't worry so much about what the audience thought. I was thinking more about, what was the theme, what was the point, what was my wrap up and my final hit. And so with this, that's also been a really wonderful part of this, is it's kind of helped me get rid of that and realize, and a lot of other things I've done have helped to whittle away at that, but helped me realize that I'm writing to create something and add some good energy to the world. And if 2 people read it, all 100 people that I know read my first Mormon humor book. Yay! And hopefully it gave them a better day for a minute. And that's good enough. That's good enough. And if it does better than that, great. But the point of my writing isn't for that now. It's because I want to find out what happens next. And I want to create something and just add something, some lightness,
Well, I love that transition for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a big deal, actually. Kind of forgot about that till right now.
Yeah, well, and I remembered what I wanted to say. It was about that fear that you were saying, it never goes away. You just get the skills to mitigate it somewhat. And, one of my good friends is John David Mann. He's published at least 24 New York Times best-selling books. I mean, this is like the author that we all want to be. And you know who he is. He's featured in the writing gym in the modules. And, we were out to dinner this fall, and he's like, yeah, I got this new book I've got to start. I'm terrified. Right? Like, I mean, it's not like this man does not know how to write a good book. He's done it, right? And he's kind of like, the way that he's talking, like he's saying all of the things that people say. And I'm like, you're right. It's like, actors who got on stage, they still got some stage fright. They also have the skills.
Yeah, you know how to leverage it, and then it's not panic and terror. I mean, if it's panic and terror, then like go get some therapy because there's something else going on. But you can learn how to leverage that energy that comes with the anxiety. And if you never feel anxious again, I would worry. Like in my performance, if I didn't feel any anxiety at all, or any at least energy, like, is this gonna? I mean, you've got to have that. Is this gonna work right? Is this gonna be okay? The days that I have less of that, my performance is honestly not as good. The days that I'm like, blah, I'm tired, okay, there's an audience. Yeah. It's just, and you're an actress, so it's not quite as on point as the days when I can have energy and leverage it. And honestly, in life, I mean, this isn't such a weird thing. I mean, as a parent, I've had self-doubt all the way through. I've had days where I do not know how to deal with this, and I'm scared because I don't know how to deal with this. or are my kids going to grow up and be, a burden on society? Or are they going to be, because I messed up? There's not been anything I've done that I haven't had nerves about. And I think that's normal. If it's debilitating, that's something we can get help with and then come back. But I don't think you should feel weird if you're fearful in writing. I think that's life.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Andrew just said, maybe a little fear gives us an edge. And I think that, we get so bogged down and hard on ourselves about feeling fear that we don't realize the gift that fear can be. And again, I don't usually mention my book this many times, but I did talk about that in the book and how we can really channel that fear and turn it into something productive and be grateful for it. And that's something we talk about a lot in the modules in the writing gym, is how to turn that around and use the tool.
Yeah. And what's that saying? It's a famous saying, the only thing to fear is fear itself. You know that one?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. And I think that sometimes we're so afraid to be afraid that's what freaks us out is, oh no, I feel fear. Oh no, I'm not supposed to feel fear. Yeah. Like, don't take it that seriously. Okay, I feel fear, but I'm going to get past it. So that's been part of it for me, is not taking the fear that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And not take it that seriously and keep going.
Right. Yeah. And so one of the things I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. One of the things that you said to me at one point was, the writing gym is going to go worldwide and it's great and everybody should know about this. So, for the people who are listening, who are not a part of the writing gym, can you talk a little bit about why you said that?
Well, in that moment, I was flush with the joy of finding out that I could write and that I'd found my process. And the reason I said that is because, I sure don't want this to sound critical, because it isn't, is I think I have been to a lot of writers' conferences in an effort to figure this out, and like all over the place, in state, out of state, just all over the place. And there have been classes that address discovery writing and pantsers and outlining. And a lot of times what I was hearing was, so, this is, you keep writing, or here you think of this, or you do this, or you just go, but ultimately you're probably going to have to outline. I would hear that a lot. And sometimes I heard classes that kind of talked about, explore this idea, just go ahead and go with it, just go ahead and write with it. And that was great. But what I didn't have, what I've never heard, were the actual symptoms of being a discovery writer and the nuts and bolts of what it is to be a discovery writer, what it means. I've never heard anybody say your first draft is your outline. And I wouldn't say wasted, because I've learned a ton, but it took a lot of years for me to figure this out and learn this and find this out. So the reason I said that is because I know I'm not the only discovery writer out there, and no disrespect at all for outliners, and no disrespect for discovery writers who have said, nope, I've got to outline at all. But I didn't find those exact words that rang in my brain until I came to your class. And I didn't understand that the reason that I would stop and start a new chapter was because I needed to discover what was happening, and I couldn't figure out that was a legitimate thing to do in that chapter. So I'd start a new chapter to discover something new, and then I get stuck. And so I started a new chapter to discover something new, and didn't realize I could do all that, put all that energy into this one place, and it would have saved me years. So I said this needs to go worldwide, because I think there are a lot of people out there in my shoes who just don't know that what they're doing is legitimate, and they just need to go with it, and be in scene and go. And just the specific things you taught, that, I don't know, it gave me a framework around myself to understand myself, so I could go and have the confidence. That's why I said that.
I love that. Wow. I mean, thank you.
You should totally pay me to market you, baby.
Hired. Well, thank you, Janelle, so much for your time. This is a big, big issue. We had a lot of people register for this masterclass because I think a lot of people feel this and they don't know what to do about it. So I think your tips are really, really helpful for people. So for those of you who are on live right now, please head over to Write to Publish and put your takeaways. One of the things that we teach in the writing gym is how to retain what it is that you learn. And one of those ways is to right away talk about it, write about it, converse about it. So if you put your takeaways over in the group, we can start a conversation and you'll retain this knowledge and work on your fear around your writing. Thank you for being here, Janelle. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me a story to share.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Happy writing, everyone.